Hello and welcome to another edition of the Steelers Depot live stream for this Monday, December 30th, a final one of 2024. Hopefully everyone had a mostly good Christmas and holiday. I know Pittsburgh's play has put a damper on things, but hopefully everyone has a safe and fun New Year's Eve and New Year's Day coming on up as Pittsburgh trying to get out of this three-game funk, dropping to 10-6, second place in the AFC North, and now looking like a wild card team for wild card weekend. But one more game to go in the regular season on Saturday night against the Cincinnati Bengals, a big game for both teams. Dave, Bryan, Alex, Kozora here for the next hour to answer as many Steelers questions as possible. Dave, how you doing? Thanks for being here.
Happy Monday, or sorta, I guess, kinda. Coming off of 3-game losing streak there, trying to not make it 4. I think that would be the first time that the Steelers have closed out a regular season 0-4 since 1998. I believe that was the last time that happened there. So I know all of us are gearing up for a big game against the Bengals on Saturday night, and obviously if the Steelers win that, and not expecting the Ravens to lose, but and if they don't, then the Steelers would be primed to go on the road to play the Texans in the first round, wild card round of the playoffs. And then obviously if they don't win and they end up as the 6th seed, then it's to Baltimore they go for the wild card. So gonna be a week that goes quick, and hope everybody's doing good tonight. And thanks for joining us.
Like I said, Dave and I here until 8 p.m. Eastern time. If you guys could like this video, also subscribe to the channel, and of course, check out the site you see on screen, SteelersDepot.com, to keep you guys in the know. Would appreciate that. If you want a guarantee of your question being asked and answered by Dave and myself, you can send us a super chat, and you'll move to the front of the line. No obligation, but we appreciate all the super chats just the same. So, Dave, let's dive right on into the questions, and more of a comment from our friend Mike Adesso, who, as usual, leads us off. He says, Happy New Year to all yins. Feels like it's been so long since they last played. I forget what we're supposed to be outraged at. Seems like the holiday may have drowned it out a little, thankfully. Our Twitter mentions may disagree on the outrage. It's still, I think, pretty fresh right now.
Is there a question there?
No, just more of a comment there from Mike. Let's go to Mark Cunningham, who says, when Baltimore wins, is it as simple as resting your key players for the playoff game at the risk of going in the postseason on a 4-game bender? I say yes. What say you? Also, Josh Miller saying he does not like the idea of resting players when we haven't seen a good performance in over a month. We need to see this team prepare well and execute, again, to generate some momentum, in his opinion. So that came up during the Tomlin presser today. It was odd, I think, the NFL putting the Baltimore and Cleveland game on that Saturday, that late afternoon window time slot. Not really sure what the intent was there. What is your take on that? Mike Tomlin said he has not really paid it much attention, something he may consider should that happen close to kickoff, but not a route he expects to take.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I would be surprised if he took that route. Because they got to get the stench off of him for starters, and like it or not, you still have something. Even if Baltimore wins that game, which they probably are, I mean, you still got some seating ahead of you what would you rather have, a trip to Houston or a trip to Baltimore? Now, some may say, Baltimore better, and you've beaten them already once this season, and maybe that's the way you want to go, but Baltimore's playing great ball right now, and it'd be one thing if this team had been stringing together a couple of nice games as of late. But they have it. They need to get things. They need to get things going on both sides of the ball better in this finale. So I would be surprised unless it starts getting later in the Cincinnati game and it's out of hand and it looks like you're not going to win that one. Then maybe you pull some players out. But it doesn't seem like it's in Tomlin's MO unless you're locked into a certain position seed in this thing to not try to to gain at least some sort of an advantage, which I view the advantage as being going to Houston first round wild card.
I think always trying to pick who you want to play in the playoffs can be tricky, but I get your point. On paper, you certainly would rather face the Texans than Baltimore. But even just beyond that, from the seeding standpoint of let's be the highest seed we can, Pittsburgh is not locked into that 5 seed. If they lose, and if the Chargers beat the Raiders, which has a good chance of happening, the Steelers become the 6 seed, and it just becomes an even harder path. But I think knowing that, and also, as you said, knowing the need for this team to put on good tape, have some confidence, get back to their winning ways, not go into this season on a 4-game skid. I think those two reasons combined makes it a no-brainer. I'm playing these guys like a normal game because it's still, to me, it's not a must-win game, but in a lot of ways that aren't standing related, it feels like a must-win game for this team to turn things around.
Right, get right game.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. Mike Adesso says, I think the most important thing over resting is getting the team back to playing winning football. They are going to come off 10 days rest. Can't live in our fears with injuries, as Tomlin would say. Agreed, Mike. And even the idea of resting guys, of course you could rest some guys, but you can't rest the entire team because your roster's only so big. And so even resting is something you can only do so much to select players. So I was kind of surprised to see the attention it's gotten today. Not something I'd really been considering, and I don't think it's really going to be something that plays out in a meaningful way come the Bengals game.
Now, if you were locked into a certain seed right now, like Houston's got the best kind of best situation there, not named teams like Buffalo and obviously Kansas City, right? Because they know what they're going to do. So Houston. They probably got several things that obviously too they don't want to go into the playoffs playing like they did against Baltimore. So it will be interesting to see their attack of this because they can't increase their seeding whatsoever. But they're like the Steelers, they're not playing their best ball right now. So I would imagine it'd be probably a little bit different situation if you're locked into a seed. But once again, they're not playing good ball, and you would think that they'd want to get some of that worked out, at least half of a game worked out to see if they can get some things on the right track.
Right, you talk about risking injuries, guys that don't get to practice throughout the week, because obviously the starters are practicing right now, not knowing the outcome of the Ravens game, and then those guys have to go into action. You're just setting yourself up for even more, I think, disaster and potential injuries, so I just don't see the real benefit I get the benefit of resting players and the injury protection, but Pittsburgh they've not earned the right to protect themselves from injury. They need to go out there and play and win. All right, let's go to Raged EA, a comment question, maybe a little tongue-in-cheek, I'm not quite sure. It says, pretty good throw by Kenny Pickett, huh? I don't know if he's talking about some of the actual good throws or the self-sack he had as he tried to pump fake and fell down. He left with that rib injury, but I think Eagles fans should be pretty happy with his play. He had the rib injury, they blew out Dallas, and they're playing good football, so I think Pickett's settled into his role as a competent backup just fine.
Yeah, he completed a couple of deep passes down the field as well too. Even though there was some nice separation, I think on both those. I didn't sit there. I went in full intent trying to watch that game for the sheer fact that Kenny Pickett was starting it, but you know how things go, and then that game got out of hand, and started to hear a few more things about some other games going on, so I was switching around there. But I saw the highlights on it, and he unfortunately took a heck of a hit in that game and got knocked out at around halftime or so anyway, and the game was out of hand, and he never returned back to it. So it's a small sample size. Even the guy Tanner McKee that came in after him seemed to be able to get that offense to move and get it into the end zone as well too. So one game sample size there against a team like Dallas that's kind of beat up, but he did complete a couple throws down the field.
He did. So good for him. If you guys could like this stream, would appreciate that. Get as many members of Steelers Nation into the chat as possible. Let's go to Caitlin Knotts, who says, what is the highest need for the 2025 draft? And it's a good question. There's probably a couple answers there. Little hard to give a definitive one, just given that you don't know how free agency is going to go and let the season play out. But I really just think about wide receiver and adding a quality receiver to give this team more options, so the Pickens injuries and any potential moments where he's not available doesn't become catastrophic. I just think this offense really was kind of just playing with 10 guys this year because that second receiver spot was often a black hole. Now Calvin Austin's done well, but I came on later in the season, more rotational. Van Jefferson, I talked about his empty snaps over the weekend. A lot of needs, a lot of areas to address. Future can change that answer, but I'll go receiver right now, Dave.
Yeah, I think you got to put receiver up there, and we'll see obviously too what's going to happen with George Pickens during this offseason. He's finishing up his third year. We've talked several times about he's probably going to want a contract done, or the Steelers going to be willing to give that to him. And if they're not, are they going to try to cushion themselves in case of some sort of maybe holdout happens or something along those lines? And then you factor that in, that even if you had George show up bright and early for every session and ready to move on from there, you didn't get a Roman Wilson barely played any snaps, so it's going to be like a rookie season for him in 2025. You did see some good things from Calvin Austin this year, but beyond that, really, what do you have? So I do think that you have to go into this draft, or at least free agency, and we'll get clues as we go along here, because obviously free agency, the meat of it starts before the draft does. We'll see how they attack that. But I do think wide receiver needs to be at the top of the list. I think they need to address defensive line, some form or fashion, either with another experienced vet, or a younger draft pick on top of that. Cornerback's going to be a discussion that we're going to be talking about near the top of the draft. I'm sure the conversation of running back's going to come up, especially if Najee Harris goes elsewhere during the offseason, albeit I'm hoping that they don't spend a first or second round draft pick on a running back. But you could be talking about one maybe in the middle rounds or something like that. So I think that's the meat and potatoes right there. And I think too, beyond Pat Freiermuth and beyond Darnell Washington, I think you got to maybe look at another tight end body that can serve as a blocker / receiver and maybe help you out on special teams at some point during the draft. So if I were to draw out just positions loosely ahead of free agency from where this team sits right now, that would be it.
How many receivers are under contract for next year and 2026? It's not many, because you have so many of these guys you signed to one-year deals. For next year, it's Pickens and Austin, but they're entering the final year of their rookie contracts. And for 2026, is Roman Wilson the only receiver signed past next year, Dave?
Let's see. That would be correct. Roman Wilson looks like the only one under contract for 2026.
Yeah, so there's short-term implications that are needed, and even longer-term implications for how much different this room could look next year and beyond. So that's a good list of positions that probably won't change dramatically no matter what happens from now until April's draft. Next question comes from Mike Adesso. This is going to be up your alley, Dave. He says, Joel Corey, former NFL agent Joel Corey, said in reference to Russ's contract, Ben signing a 2-year contract averaging $34 million per year in 2019 at age 37, when the salary cap was $188.2 million, will be raised by Russ's camp in any negotiations with the Steelers. Thoughts? Dave, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I saw that from Joel Corey earlier this morning in response to a tweet. B, it makes sense. Joel's done this thing for a long time. I understand kind of the route that he's going there. And look, I mean, we still got a couple of games left in the season to watch Russ play and see if he can help his value. And we've gone over several times the quarterback market as it is right now. And when you're talking about even a $40 million annual salary, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. That puts you at 15th on the list, tied with Matthew Stafford. If you think that you can get away a little bit cheaper with a price tag on that from Russ, I mean, it's hard to imagine 35 million. I suppose you can make an argument of where Baker's at right now. I've seen some people bring up his name right now, and Baker's even at 33.333 million right now. So quarterbacks cost, man. They cost, and an experienced guy like Russell Wilson, who, remember, just because of the salary that he earned this year with the Steelers was obviously peanuts. I mean, he still earned a cash value of what, damn near $40 million. So, right. I definitely understand where Joel Corey is coming from. Now, you do have to be careful when you're talking about a guy of his age and that amount. And, with the Steelers, I think the Steelers would be careful when it comes to guaranteed money. When it comes to that, I would envision something like a 3-year deal, anywhere between, I don't know, $35-40 million new money average. And, guarantee, Russ would probably want damn near almost half of that guaranteed, and that would be an interesting conversation to have. You want to get yourself obviously in a conversation or in a situation where even if you sign him to a 3-year deal, that after the 2025 season, if things don't go well, you can part ways with them, with marginal dead money attached, from that situation on there. So we do have at least a couple more games and to see how he goes. But I mean, if not him, and I know some people say, well, why don't you just go the Justin Fields route? Well, obviously that would be a cheaper route to go, but how much did you learn about Justin Fields in the first 5-6 games of the season here? And is that enough to tie your wagon to think that he can be your franchise quarterback and lead you to a Super Bowl next year? Because obviously that would be the expectations of, regardless of who one of these two quarterbacks or even both quarterbacks coming back next year, with the pieces that they have in place and the money they have sunk in the defense and the draft capital that they have sunk into the offensive line, especially if they get into the playoffs this year. And let's say they win only one playoff game. If you don't go with either one of those guys, then you're going back out to the outside again, and you're trying to take a swing at a veteran, probably a little bit higher priced one, and think that's the guy that can take you to deeper into the playoffs.
And that pool does not look great if your name's not Sam Darnold, who I have a hard time believing will leave Minnesota, just based on how he's played and the value he's created there. So your other options become likely a Kirk Cousins and not a whole lot else. Let me just ask you quickly, Dave. And I know it's speculation based on how things go these next couple of weeks and individual performances, but how much does a playoff win alter Wilson's value if he gets it or if he does, if the team goes to the divisional round or not? Does that change, do you think, significantly what his market value or what his value to Pittsburgh would become?
I think it depends on what it looks like. I mean, we already know at this point, we've seen enough of Russ to kind of know his strengths, though, right?
Yeah. Assuming he plays a good game that aids Pittsburgh in victory. It may not be the sole reason, but it's certainly not winning in spite of him.
I don't think it severely escalates what his maybe perceived value is to teams at this point. I think more than anything, it just secures it.
Okay. But I wonder if it would increase the value to Pittsburgh because they've been itching for that playoff win for so long. You finally get a quarterback who leads you to that. Hard to let that guy walk out the door.
Yeah, that's true, but there, everything has a max value to it on top of it, though. So, are we talking 40 going as high as like 45 million? And I think Kirk Cousins is 45 million. Deshaun Watson's 46 million. You better have a lot of confidence, especially if you're going. I mean, let's say let's say they agree, and I'm not saying this is what it's going to be, but let's say the number's 45 million, right, of new money value. Well, what's 3 times 45?
Oh, I was told there'd be no math here.
90. That's 100. That's 135 million, right? Over 3 years. You'd probably think he's going to want, 45 to 50% of that guaranteed. So, right around half of it. So, I mean, you could obviously make that work and, keep his first year cap hit moderate, but you got to be careful and guarantee and say the first 2 years of that in case that he falls off the cliff in 2025 and you want to go a different direction there. So I couldn't imagine, and I've been wrong on this before. I mean, the quarterback cap's going up. We don't even have the full exact number on that right now, but I would think Russ is probably going to want to be probably in the top 15 or so. And that number is probably going to be anywhere between 35 and 45 million.
Yeah, that's fair. We shall see. It'll be the big storyline of March, no question about that. Let's go to Matt. He says, how do you feel about our playoff hopes of winning a game this year? Is it okay to have a lot of optimism because anything can happen and we have good enough pieces, or should we be more pessimistic? Well, I'll take some optimism at this point because there's been a lot of pessimism, rightfully so, lately. You know, I'm not optimistic right now. It's hard to be optimistic, but I still go into the playoffs with the mindset of anything can happen on a given day. Pittsburgh is capable of playing a good game, even against quality opponents, against Baltimore, against Washington earlier this year, against the Chargers early in the season. Yes, Herbert was hampered, but still a nice showing overall. When things come together, Pittsburgh has a talent. There is the group that is capable of winning a playoff game in any given Sunday. Things come together, one or two plays you make that Pittsburgh's not been making in recent weeks. Yes, they can. So I don't really try to have a ton of stock into am I optimistic or pessimistic. I just kind of take it as it is, as it comes. But yeah, I'm not throwing in the towel and giving up on the season and just assuming and just telling myself this season will be one and done. It certainly could be, no question, but I'm not going to sit there and say that's fate for Pittsburgh right now.
If they get these guys back, Joey Porter Jr. is supposed to come back, hopefully, this week, Skoranek, all the other guys that came back last week, if those guys stay on the field, quality of personnel wise, they have the talent. If they play the type of ball that we've seen them be able to play, to the better side on both sides of the football and special teams, they can go to Houston. They can even go to Baltimore and come out of both those places with a win. Obviously, Baltimore would be a little bit tougher. We saw what happened the last time when they dedicated, running Derrick Henry, and the Steelers really didn't have an answer to it. But in the flip side, these two teams know each other. They know what it takes to beat Baltimore. It's a matter of doing it. I think there's less of a margin of error for a team like the Steelers, especially when it's against a team like Baltimore, than some of those higher seeded teams like the Chiefs, obviously, and the Bills, and along those lines. I'm not expecting the matchup, obviously, but should somehow they end up winning the North and get the Chargers, in the first round, I think they could play with them as well too. So do they have the personnel to compete in a wild card game, regardless of if it's Houston, the Chargers, or the Texans? Or the Ravens? Mm-hmm. Yes, I think so. But I do think also that they got to play their best ball. Sure. In those type of games, and that means no turnovers. That means capitalizing, all the standard rock fight checklist, that we've seen this team have to check off in order to beat some of these better teams in the NFL. So I think there should be some optimism that if they take a healthy bunch wherever they go in the first round, that they could potentially win a game. Now, past that, I think it depends on matchup and health of both teams and yada, yada, because obviously then you're going to be talking about, probably playing Buffalo, Kansas City, however that stacks out. Mm-hmm.
Right. They got to do the things they're not doing right now. And I know it doesn't feel like that in the moment, and I'm not proclaiming that Pittsburgh will win a wild card game, but if they do, it is going to the tone is going to change so much, even if it is quote unquote only against Houston, a skidding Texans team too. To get that victory, which would be on the road, it would be huge for this franchise. And I'm not trying to set the bar low. I'm just saying as measures of progress, it's like, okay, finally to win that first playoff game since 2016, to have tangible postseason success, which should be the metric of this team. I agree, it's not about just regular season accolades and going 9-8 or above 500, all that kind of stuff. I'm with you there. That is lowering the bar. But to have postseason success, no matter the opponent, it's hard to win on the road in the postseason, would be big for this franchise, and we'll feel a whole lot better if they do accomplish that.
Well, I think you're already seeing, I forget, some people tweeted it out about, well, you can't move the goalpost at this point. And I do agree with that. We came into this, I know you and I did. Right. We came into this season saying, look, this team's got to get into the playoffs and they've got to win a playoff game for it to be deemed a successful season. And on top of it, it would be nice to know which way maybe you're going to go at the quarterback position coming out of the season on top of it there. Regardless of how you do it and who I don't think it's fair at that point to say, well, Yeah, they went to Houston and they beat a Houston team that wasn't playing their best ball, had a couple injuries and all. Look, this is a Houston team that railroaded them with a rookie quarterback Stroud, last season there. So I don't think you lose sight of what most of us deemed as a successful season for this team, regardless of how it gets accomplished. I don't care if it's 6-3, and that will be, if they do somehow win, let's say they go to Houston and they do win, in ugly, unconvincing fashions. Well, then you're going to have the goalpost moved by some people saying, well, look at how it happened. I won't, because look, I had this team going 9-8 this year and not making the playoffs. So, but I did say that it would be a successful season if they got in and won a playoff game.
Well said, and good question from Matt. We appreciate that. Just a reminder, if you guys could like this stream, hit that like button, subscribe, and check out the site. SteelersDepot.com would appreciate that. Got a video on Jaylen Warren going up on the site and channel tomorrow. It'll be on the site first, followed by the channel at noon. A little positivity, a little Jaylen Warren zone read, or zone run reads, and kind of how well he did against the Kansas City Chiefs. So we'll break that down for you guys on Tuesday. John Pennington says, happy holidays, Dave and Alex. Same to you, John. He goes on to say, do you guys think Russell Wilson not playing to the chains for the first down is hurting the team? He throws deep on third downs instead of getting enough to keep the chains moving. That's more case by case, depends on route tree and coverage and how all those things combine. I do get your overall point. Wilson, much like Ben, is not afraid to take advantage and try to throw deep in any situation if he gets one-on-one coverage on the outside. I do think Pittsburgh is making things harder on themselves by not always scheming stuff up for those more short yardage type situations, 3rd and 3 and closer. I know it's easy to cherry pick and just pick out plays from over the weekend, but I remember watching the Chargers, Dave, on Saturday on a 3rd and 2, little rub route in the flat. You get the first down, get 5 yards, pitch and catch, easy. The Bengals on Saturday night, similar type stuff. I don't think we're seeing enough of that in this passing game, but I don't think that's the fault of Wilson because often those things just really aren't called or are open for him.
Yeah, now look, you obviously hate the way short of the chains type of stuff. And I tell you what's kind of irritated me as of late is all these throwaways, regardless of the down and distance. I mean, you're wasting a down, you have zero chance. And I understand you don't want a catastrophe play on top of it, so you have to, in some aspect, applaud Russ because how many times have we seen, over the most recent years with Russell Wilson of just trying to do something and not throwing the ball away and then turning the ball over, and having a catastrophe play, if you will. I think having some level of continuity in the offense generally sometimes helps with that as well too. I mean, we've seen this offense be very fractured, especially out of the chute, and not get any continuity on drives, and especially without George Pickens in there. But I think you got to do, look, they're not doing a great job of scheming stuff, especially non-Pickens stuff open, like you said. You talk about the empty routes. Van Jefferson's out there. Do they really even have to cover him? And that's one wasted player you have out on the field.
Yeah, Pittsburgh. That's why it goes back to getting more receiver talent and not feeling incomplete as a personnel grouping, and Pittsburgh has felt that for most of the season. Vegas TJG has a quality rant for us here. I'll just read it off. Probably not really any commentary to add, but I'll just read it since he's always here, and we'll give him the opportunity to say his mind. He says, if they lose the next 2 games badly, then trade Tomlin, TJ, Fitzpatrick, Broderick Jones, Pickens, and Queen, and sign Dan Campbell, the OC from the Lions, as the 4th head coach since 1969, and change the name back to Heinz Field. So all bases covered on selling the team, moving Albuquerque there from Vegas TJG.
Yeah. He checked all the boxes, didn't he?
Yeah, and I think he's referring to Ben Johnson. He says, sign Dan Campbell, the OC from the Lions. Dan Campbell's the head coach, but I think he's referring to Ben Johnson. But anyway, that's just that's the venting there from Vegas. Mark says, as far as I'm concerned, it's all about the quarterback. In your opinion, do we have the quarterback to win a Super Bowl in the future? If not, then everything else this year or next is a moot point. Fair, I understand that, absolutely. How would you address that, Dave, on Mark's question? Is Russell Wilson a quarterback who could win Pittsburgh a Super Bowl?
He's borderline right now. I'm very interested to see how he does, in this last game against the Bengals, and in the first round of the playoffs. There, I mean, he's got. Look, the deep ball's still there. It still feels like he's a guy that can maneuver and make some plays outside of the pocket. It feels like a guy that can still have command of an offense overall, especially if you're to give him another good piece or two at the wide receiver position. There's been a lot of positives with Russell Wilson up until these last couple of games. Look, in those first several games, he was coasting along, I think, with adjusted net yards per passing attempt number of well over 7. And that that in and of itself tells you that should be enough. Now, you obviously haven't had the defensive support on the other side of things. You've seen Russell Wilson turn the football over as of late a couple times. One, be it a fumble, down, deep in the opposition side. That those kind of things can't happen. You see him this red zone touchdown to Pat Freiermuth the other day. Interesting to hear Mike Tomlin's talk about the route of George Pickens, today and all like that, and say, that interception did not happen because of that. Well, what you needed something on that backside to. If that, then you're saying that Russell Wilson really either A, had to get that ball out even quicker and maybe to more back shoulder to Pat Freiermuth, or B, he shouldn't even thrown that football, because there was nothing to hold that safety, on the backside.
Yeah, I assume it's the latter. I assume it's just putting that on Russ for throwing a ball that shouldn't have been thrown.
Right, and I kind of find that hard to believe. If that was the play design and George Pickens was not supposed to go vertical, then somebody needs to look at that play design.
Yeah, Russ said post-game he expected and thought Pickens would run vertical. We've talked about it a lot. It's been discussed pretty endlessly, that particular play. I think there's blame to be shared. I still put it on Russ in the sense of he's the one throwing the football, has to know the coverage and what it looks like, no matter who runs the right route, the wrong route, or anything like that. And I think it's what it came down to. But yeah, Pickens, or Tomlin certainly absolving Pickens of any potential wrongdoing today. Next question, and really to Mark, to answer your question, like, is Russ in that tier 1 of quarterbacks, the Mahomes and Allens who are those true Super Bowl type winning quarterbacks? No, obviously not. So I understand your point, but I think with the right talent around him, you can go on a run with him, with a defense playing at its best as it's shown throughout the year, with more offensive weapons. This is a guy that's capable of doing that in the right moment. The team would have to get hot and all those types of things. And just, I hate to use the what alternatives are there, but what alternatives are there if you don't have Russ as your quarterback next year in terms of finding that Super Bowl definitive quarterback? Every team is asking that question, the team that does not have one, and this quarterback class is a mess. Not that Pittsburgh would have a chance to get a top blue chip prospect anyway, and no free agents to be, all that kind of stuff. So point taken, but I think Russ is the best guy that of all your options to try to get you there. But again, as Dave said, let the season play out, and we'll talk about those concluding thoughts once all the information and all the hay is in the barn. Rhonda Chanel says, what happens if the Steelers win, which they will? We appreciate the optimism, Rhonda. I don't know if that's referring to the Bengals game or a playoff game. I'll assume that's for the Bengals game this Saturday. Well, if they win, they can be no worse than the 5 seed, Rhonda. And if they win and the Ravens somehow lose to the Browns, then Pittsburgh will be the 3 seed and host a wild card game during wild card weekend. So 5 seed at worst if they win, potentially 3 seed.
Right.
Travis Pick says, is there any chance the 3 games we just lost was furthering an offensive trend so that when we get to the playoffs, we are unleashing something that we practiced all year that is a surprise? So was this just Pittsburgh playing the long game and hiding some stuff on tape, Dave, to unleash, and we'll use the Tomlin unleash hell come the playoffs?
Yeah, I kind of doubt it. I think what you've seen is kind of, I don't think they're withholding anything at this point
Right.
here. I think what they have on tape is who they are at this point. They just need to, they've got to perfect this thing. They've got to get off to some quicker starts. I know Mike Tomlin's downplayed that several times, but you got to see this team come out of the locker room in the first quarter and put the ball in the end zone. Maybe not the first drive, but how about the second drive? We got to see some more first quarter points. We got to see some more continuity. There have been bright spots throughout this season of this team moving the football down the football field, but a lot of times you're settling for field goals in those situations there. So we've just got to see what they put on film to this point be done better, more consistently. And that includes the running game, obviously.
I'd love to think that Pittsburgh was playing 4D chess out there and lulling us all into this false sense of insecurity, but no, that's not the case. Pittsburgh's not busting coverages because they're hiding something and they're not turning the ball over. What they're hiding is just, it's turnovers. They take care of the football. They're a lot more competitive in these games. I know it's so easy to boil these things down to turnover differential and takeaways and giveaways, but Pittsburgh, they were plus 17 before their 3-game losing streak. In turnover differential, and they're -2 across those past 3 games, and so that really says all that must be said about why Pittsburgh was succeeding and why they're struggling now. Wild Herb seems to be upset. He says Steelers 2024 was winning. Najee 1,000 yards, Pickens 900, 2 second-hand quarterback rejects in a playoff berth. Steelers do not win playoff games. That's okay. Tomlin, Hall of Fame coach. No losing season, so heavy on the sarcasm there. We'll see. We'll see if they win a playoff game or not. Not going to say yes or no and let the season play on out. Kevin says, happy holidays, Dave and Alex. Same to you, Kevin. How much of the consternation of the fan base is due to overperforming the national media, last place team, but not living up to something great? How spoiled are we? I understand that Steeler fans have the unique position of always being competitive and never bottoming out or having continued bad seasons like so many teams, even ones that went through franchise quarterback changes like the Patriots and Giants and all that kind of stuff. But it's not unreasonable for this fan base to expect more, to expect at least one playoff win since 2016. So I think the frustration is rightfully deserved and earned right now.
Well, you also, I've obviously spanned several decades and seen, grew up obviously through the 70s and how that was expected and how that standard was set there. And then I also went through the 80s and the early 90s and all like that. And most of today's quote unquote hardcore fans and those that mostly participate in like this tonight and all are more products of the Ben Roethlisberger kind of era, where it became an assumption that you're going to be in the playoffs, you're going to win these playoff games, and then obviously no playoff wins now, since way too long at this point. So I definitely understand the consternation. I see the consternation. It is time for this team to get more than just a bumper sticker of another winning season for Mike Tomlin. It has reached a point where that is not enough. And, so many words, Art Rooney said that after last season there. We got to get back into winning playoff games here. I get all that. But on top of it, today's NFL, and has been for a while, is so centered around the franchise quarterback and good defensive play. And we have seen some good quarterback play at points during this season. We've seen some good defensive play at some points during this season. As of the last several weeks, though, we have not seen that on both sides of the ball. Long story short, yeah, I understand why the fan base is frustrated, and it will be super disappointing if this team does not win a playoff game this year. And yeah, I mean, we expect to hear it from the fan base if they don't get that accomplished.
And just to address that other point quickly, I don't think the national media expectations and Pittsburgh surpassing them is really impacting the fan base internally in terms of their feelings about the season. Like most Steeler fans expected Pittsburgh to surpass national media expectations way back in the summer when they were expecting 6-win season, 8-win season, no playoffs, that kind of stuff. I think most fans realized that was unlikely to come true. And so I don't think the national media expectations have anything to do that's influencing the frustration from this fan base currently. Vegas says, is Omar Khan overrated? It's a big question. It's a short question, but an impactful one. I just think we need more time to really evaluate him. I mean, it's not brand new to the job, 2.5 years, but evaluating draft classes and free agencies and trends, all those kinds of things. Those draft classes may not have quite the shine on them that we were celebrating at one point whenever they were occurring, but you just need more time to let things play out, I think.
Yeah, I think it's too early to tell in this. I think he has, we'll obviously some of these more recent, draft classes that he's overseen, they've got to really start paying off here, starting now. Guys like Joey Porter, who else? Broderick Jones, Fautano, Frazier, McCormick. These guys have, they've got so much invested in this offensive line through draft capital alone, right?
Mm-hmm.
That you can't afford to have these guys miss where you're going back into the draft, let's say 2026, and having to draft another tackle or another guard early. You've got to be able to start spinning. And then look, I mean, you've got to start seeing these first and second round picks start playing well enough where it's no-brainers that you re-up them,
Yeah, well, that's last time Pittsburgh picked up the 5th-year option on one of these first-round guys even. It's been a minute.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just, again, still I would say too early to really fully evaluate Khan in any meaningful way. Walter, would you try to re-sign Russ? If so, how many years and how much? Kind of touched on this earlier. I'm certainly open to it, but again, I want to let the season play out, and then we can really kind of talk turkey on that type of stuff there. Pancake says, do you think we can get a good running back from free agency? I had not looked at the list of pending free agents. I don't know if it'll be as attractive as his past years with Josh Jacobs and Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry, but we'll see. We'll see the names. We'll see what happens with Najee Harris. And the draft class, I think, is pretty strong. I've done very light work on the draft class this year, obviously still in season, but my understanding is it's going to be a pretty good one.
Yeah, and I haven't probably even dove as deep as you have. I'm just trying to start getting my bearings, and it does seem like it's a deeper running back class. And look, you've got a good guy. Let's say Najee Harris goes elsewhere. You have Jaylen Warren scheduled to be a restricted free agent. You can easily keep him with a second-round tender. So you've got that covered there. We'll see how, can you get a cheap compliment from him in free agency and spend mid-round pick on a guy to kind of fill that group out. Yeah, I think that's very, very possible for sure. Looking at some of these names though, let's see. Aaron Jones contract voids, I think. A.J. Dillon, it looks like, is going to be isn't he dinged up or injured right now? Javonte Williams, Alexander Madison, Travis Homer, Ezekiel Elliott, Amir. I mean, it drops off real quick there. So if you did go that route as somebody to bring in to help kind of complement Jaylen Warren, I wouldn't expect you're going to be spending a whole hell of a lot of money when it comes to a guy like that, and not enough where if you did go that way that it wouldn't prevent you from spending a mid or late round draft pick on the position as well. And I'm always a fan of bringing in, if you've listened to the podcast over the years, I think you should have at a minimum 3 or 4 undrafted free agents brought in, rookie free agents to let those guys compete. And you see what happened with Jaylen Warren situation there. So it's definitely something that you want to throw enough mud at the wall at, maybe during via a cheap free agent, a mid-round draft pick, and make sure you have a couple of rookie undrafted free agents in camp, and then surely you'll be able to get some sort of compliment to go along with Jaylen Warren that way.
I've been needing some Dave Bryan running backs are fungible commentary back in my
Mm-hmm.
life, so I appreciate that. I'm sure we'll hear more of it in the offseason. And frankly, this running back room could look pretty different in 2025 with Harris potentially gone and Cordero Patterson. Talk about some big disappointments this year. Patterson may not be the most consequential or even at the top of the list, but he has not been what Pittsburgh hoped he would be.
And the good thing is, the way his contract is set up, I don't think you have to make a decision with him in March. You could carry him all the way through and get to a point and look at a lot of different bodies that way, and then get to the start of the season and then cut bait that way if you needed to.
All right, about 15 minutes left. Let's try to go through as many questions as possible. Dave Vinny says, do you think banjo coverage will help better the flat so guys don't constantly leave that area open? I don't know if it's banjo coverage as being the issue. They did it in that Eagles game on the Devonta Smith touchdown where things were passed off appropriately and correctly, and James Pierre just couldn't make a play. It was a good ball from Jalen Hurts. So that's probably just one tiny point that is unlikely to really solve some of the more core issues Pittsburgh's having right now.
How about just keep them out of the low red zone area?
Yeah. I just think better communication, quicker communication, those types of things can be cleaner. Messages sometimes are sent, not always received. We saw that on the Worthy touchdown, the Mark Andrews touchdown, and so those things can really hopefully clean things up better than any particular schematic change.
At least make it more contested down there.
Let's see. Mark Cunningham says, you guys watched the All-22. Was that holding on Washington on the Warren touchdown a bad call? I think it was the good call. I think it was the right call.
Yeah.
As much as it sucked, it was the right call to me.
Now, I'll tell you this. Officials around the league, another argument for making these guys full-time. Some of these, even in that game, what was it last night? Some of these snatch and traps, they got to get more consistency between these groups of what is holding and what isn't, even on offensive linemen. And you got a guy in Darnell who's used snatch and trap quite a bit now.
Right. Yeah, refs are having a very hard time understanding the difference between that technique and actual holding. And I'm not sure why it's suddenly been an issue this year. Don't know if it's become some sort of weird point of emphasis or just coincidence that we're tracking because it's happening a couple times, but it is weirdly been called on some. It happened to Dan Moore, I think, earlier this year where they called it on him and it was completely clean. So weird stuff. Let's see, what else do we have? Mark Miller, what is your opinion of the job Arthur Smith has done this year? I'm usually an optimist, but I'm not sold on him as the answer. Again, I'll let the season play out and collect my thoughts after the whole season is over. It's been mixed. There's been some good, some bad. I think in some adverse situations on short weeks with some injuries where coaching really has to shine, it has not. But it's not all been bad. But again, I really let the season just kind of play out and kind of review it in my head, go back, watch some tape and all that kind of stuff before I give out some final grades.
Yeah, it sure would have been nice, though, to have a more complimentary piece to go along with George Pickens, you know?
No question. Let's see, what else do we have here? 0-0 Curly Top says, based on the subpar O-line play, would you guys look at getting rid of Pat Meyer? It looks like he says, it's like the O-line is so up and down. So, yeah, I think when it comes to coaching staff changes, again, let seasons play out, yada, yada, but Pat Meyer's name is probably one that'll come up because there just simply aren't a lot of other potential coaching changes that could be even realistically floated. It's Meyer. I'm sure Terrell Austin will get some buzz in the media. Will he stay? Will he go? I don't know where I come in on that entirely yet, but Meyer's probably the one guy on offense that will get some, at least public discussion.
Yeah, and Alex and I talked about this, I think, on the podcast the other day there. I think you got to look hard, long and hard, because you've got the invested draft capital. You would think you're going to get another year probably out of Isaac Seumalo as well, too. It feels like the continuity, and I know these guys are young and all, but and I know you lost Fautano and all like that, but it as long as these five have been playing together for the amount of games that they've played up until this point, it feels like there should be more continuity in the running game. It feels like there should be more push. It feels like it should be cleaner getting to the second level on these zone runs and having a little bit more running room for even guys like Najee Harris. So I do think they need to take a hard, long look at Pat Meyer and see if that's the way that they want to go forward with 1 year under the belt. basically with three of these guys that you have in Zach Frazier, Mason McCormick, and obviously Fautano, who's played very little this year.
And check out our Monday conversation from the podcast. Dave and I go pretty in-depth into some thoughts on the run game and Pat Meyer, but I agree. The run game, the O-line is not ascending the way that it should for late in the season for a group that has been healthy since the bye week. Now, let's see. Next question comes from... where are we at here? Kenneth Jackson. Hey guys, is the O-line play also a big part of the problem of the Steelers' offensive failures? They historically have been better later in the season. Sure, anytime the offense is struggling, it often goes part and parcel. If your O-line's struggling, it's hard to win as an offense overall. So turnovers, I think, have been the most costly thing, but the O-line certainly has induced pressure and not gotten the push. And as you said, Dave, just not being as clean and crisp as they are capable of being.
Yeah, they want to be the Philadelphia Eagles. And if you watch the Philadelphia Eagles on tape, there's no wonder they want to be those guys. And they're not close to them right now. So, yeah, they've got to do a better job. And look, a better running game, especially with the kind of offense that Arthur Smith wants to run and all those tight ends out there. And to have if you want to maximize the things that Russell Wilson does well, it's more put him ahead of the change type situations. And that run game is not where it should be. Even with the injuries and all that they had, and even with the young kids that they have included in that, because of the continuity that they've had with those five, and hopefully we'll see. Look, they're gonna play a Bengals team on Saturday that is once again going to miss. Who's the guy Rankin they put on IR or today? I think they're without Logan Wilson. This is a team that you if you're going to win this ball game, you want to ball control, you want to run against them. So we got to see moving forward into this final game, on into the playoffs, an offensive line that's played better than they have in the second half of the season.
And that's how you got the 44-38 shootout in that first game, because Burrow's capable and the Bengals defense is poor, and those two things remain the same for the finale.
The best defense to play against Joe Burrow is an offensive one that keeps him off the field. He cannot beat you if he's not on the field.
And get some red zone stops. Some situational football would be nice as well. DLW says the Pittsburgh could get hot in the playoffs, but also thinks they should have stuck with Fields the whole way through. Frank says the real disappointment over the 3-game losing streak has been the absolutely horrid play from a defense that was supposed to be the strength of this team. That is fair, I think, Frank. Not incorrect analysis there. We got Daniel Berry in the chat. That was from a while ago. Just want to shout him out. He's here every single week. Eric Love says, thanks for the chat. What are your thoughts on Trice? Should he be getting snaps over Pierre? Well, we'll see about health of the team. If Porter comes back and Jackson comes back, then those outside corners are going to be more reserves. I think Trice had a pretty good game against the Chiefs, all things considered. So maybe there's a role for him in dime packages or some sort of specialty situation. Hard to say. We'll see. But yeah, I think Trice has been showing you a little something. Obviously, he's been hurt most of the season, unavailable, not playing. But hopefully it'll be more of a non-issue of Porter starting. And I suppose you could question if Dante Jackson should start as well. And maybe there's some fairness there when you're facing a big receiver like a T. Higgins in Week 18.
I do wonder because of the inexperience of Trice up until this point, and I'm with you. I thought he played a pretty good game overall against the Chiefs, but the inexperience and look, Dante Jackson hasn't been great in man coverage situations. He's got his liabilities as well. I do wonder if Porter comes back, though, how much you'll see of Trice. Who's going to be your fifth inactive in this one? Let's assume people are going to be pissed. If because look, I mean, obviously, if Justin Fields come back, Kyle Allen will be inactive as the emergency 3. You're probably going to have Scotty Miller inactive if Skoranic's back, right? Mm-hmm. You don't have you got to dress all your offensive linemen right now. You're probably going to see Preston Smith inactive again. That's 3. Dean Lowry's probably going to be inactive again. That's 4. Who's your 5th?
It's a great question. That is the one downside to having a healthier team, is that those inactives become more healthy scratches, and injuries dictate those things a bit less. So we shall see. It's a fair question to ask, and one we'll find out on Saturday.
I'm not going to say it's going to happen, but boy, you want to talk about a fan base going to be mad if Trice doesn't dress for that game.
It's the I'm not saying, I'm just saying.
All right.
From Dave Bryan. There you go. Couple minutes left. We'll fly through the rest. K. Jackson, Pittsburgh, says, guys, what say you about the defensive coordinator for the Steelers, is Terrell Austin, getting the best out of our players? Is it possible he's becoming too predictable with his game management and scheme? It's a big, heavy question, a worthwhile one asking. It's complicated knowing the influence and fingerprint that Mike Tomlin has on this defense. I'm still unclear about exactly who calls a defense from a play-to-play standpoint. It's an unpopular opinion right now, and obviously the defense is fading, and coaches Austin and Tomlin deserve blame for that. But I am less inclined to kick Austin out the door as we sit here today than the majority of the fan base. This defense overall, throughout his tenure, has played well. They played well at times this year. Obviously, these issues are horrific and must get corrected, and we'll let time tell and things play out. But I'm just not as quick triggered to make those changes, because 3 weeks ago, not a soul was talking about firing Terrell Austin. And I know that losing changes and what have you done for me lately and all those kinds of things, but I'm just not going to be that reactionary to coaching changes based on a couple of weeks.
Well, look at the thing that we've highlighted here over the last several weeks, the red zone defense for starters. That's got to be better. What's the biggest thing in any game? Keeping the score down, right? And they did that for predominantly most of the first half of the season, right?
Yeah, they were number 2 defense for first half of the year.
Right. And then, obviously you go, what was the main talking point coming out of this game against the Chiefs? The blown coverages, the miscommunication there. You play a team like that, you got to be dead solid perfect. You can't have those things happen, and you also can't go 4 or 5 inside the red zone. You knew the Chiefs are going to move the football on you. It's what do you do on the third downs? What do you do in the red zone situations there? If you want to come out and make a statement, this is a hell of a damn week to do it against a good offense of the Bengals. If you do the things right, you get the communication right, you keep you tighten up in the red zone, you keep the score down to 17, 18, 19 points. Well, I think you've done the job at that point. So this is a get right game, man. You got to get the stench off of you on both sides of the football. You got to quiet a lot of people when it comes to this defense getting back playing the way that most of us thought that they should be playing this season. You get Joey Porter back. Remember the first game against the Bengals, you didn't have Alex Highsmith either. You'll have Alex Highsmith this game as well too. So you still got games left to measure this thing, but it does start, I believe, on Saturday night against the Bengals, and having a complete defensive performance, complete with a couple of takeaways, getting Joe Burrow down on the ground. And when that offense does get into the red zone, you got to get some stops down there. You got to see him go 1 of 3, 1 of 4, something along those lines.
Fair, and I would just say in Austin's favor, I think the turnover culture has really been improved since he was brought in what was that, 2019, and the defense was overperforming in some ways last year to end last year as a number 6 scoring defense, and I don't think he's too predictable. I don't think that is the core issue for this team right now. They are just hurting themselves with so many unforced errors and missed opportunities, and that's the real reason why this defense is not playing at their usual caliber, along with just being really poor in the red zone. Next question, as we just try to go through a couple more here. Shadow Side says, do you ever see the Steelers evolving into a modern offense? I've watched the Steelers since the 70s, and it seems like the power run offense is something they will never deviate from. I mean, the Killer Bees era was a different kind of offense. It certainly was more open and more prolific in the passing game. I get your point overall. At some point, things ebb and flow based on coaching hires and all that kind of stuff. So, ever is a long time, clearly. So at some point, they likely will, become a cyclical team, and every team kind of reverts from power to open, passing game, spread system, all that kind of stuff. When that'll happen, I don't know. Probably not anytime soon, but someday.
Right.
What if the Steelers sign Ben Johnson to replace Mike Tomlin? Says Hell X Angel. Inconceivable. Not going to happen for a variety of reasons. Mike Tomlin will be the head coach next year. Just try to get through a couple new names here quickly. What do you think of Mike Tomlin's emphasis on turnovers rather than more important issues such as base defense struggles? Yeah, I mean, I don't know what all was talked about in that team meeting Thursday. I'm sure a variety of issues were discussed, but Pittsburgh's really hung their hat on taking the football away, not just this year, but throughout Tomlin's tenure. And when you don't do that, it's a lot harder to win. Pittsburgh does not play, because it's just so hard to do. They don't play suffocating defense where they're forcing punts every single time. Good offenses will move the football, but can you get stops, steal possessions, create short fields, all those kinds of things? That is Pittsburgh's bread and butter. So I'm okay with focusing on the things that brought you to this dance and punched your playoff ticket in the first place. Again, being plus 17 and turnover differential was their biggest stat working in their favor. Pittsburgh has to get back to that.
Yep, I agree. Got to get the football away.
Let's just see anything else here very quickly. Anything else? Let's see. Any from new names? Vegas had a funny comment I saw somewhere. He says, and you may get this reference, Dave. I do not. But he says, I'm guessing Dave looks like Vinny Barbarino from the old TV show Welcome Back, Kotter. If that means anything to you, Dave?
I think probably he was a lot more attractive, John Travolta, than I am. And I don't have as wavy as hair. Mine now, I kind of look like... I look like a classic 80s burnout now. My hair's well past my shoulders down towards the middle of my back now. Got a little bit of gray mixed in there. Got kind of keep it brushed back. I've got I got a catcher's mitt for a face from all the sun and hard years of put to bed wet and those kind of things there. So I kind of look like you're probably classic 80s burnout with long brown hair with a little bit of gray, tiny bit of gray mixed in.
Josh says Dave looks like Marlon Brando in his prime, so high praise there from
Josh. No. I have seen my better days. I'm trying to hold on to what little bit of youth I think. I'm trying to go through a midlife crisis here. Right. I'm doing my best to put on my best midlife crisis right now.
We're all behind you. We're rooting for you there, Dave. Living Loud with Andy says, listen to every video. Appreciate all your work. Fellow YouTuber here. Appreciate you, Andy. Thanks for stopping by here in the chat. John says... his Tampa 2 scheme is not complicated. I agree. I wouldn't say Pittsburgh runs a complex, super nuanced defense, but I think there are some layers to it in terms of personnel groupings and flexibility in terms of matching personnel, and Pittsburgh does have some wrinkles there. So I think it's somewhere in the middle. I do think they probably spot drop too much, and they don't match coverages as often as they should, and that creates problems. So it's layered. It's too hard to really discuss here at the end of the podcast or end of the live stream. But I would say, the point is, I don't think predictability is the reason why Pittsburgh is struggling in its current form. I don't think they're just beating themselves in so many clear and obvious ways. And Vegas says, it has not been the last couple weeks. It's been years. This defense has been awful. Was it awful before this 3-game losing streak? The number 6 scoring defense, despite all the injuries they had last year, in recent years, 2019, 2020, was the defense awful? I think that's probably stretching it to call this defense awful for several seasons.
All right,
we're going to probably wrap things up here. Actually, one more. Any thoughts on this 3-game stretch actually doing more good in preparing us for the playoffs and giving us a reality check before actual elimination? One loss, sure, maybe we can do that, wake a team up. 3 is too many for that kind of perspective.
And it damn sure don't need to be 4.
Yeah, absolutely. And if it's 4, then it may end up becoming 5 come wild card weekend. So we're going to wrap things up there. Appreciate all the chats and love here in the stream. Everybody who stopped by, be sure to like this stream. And, of course, subscribe to the channel and check out the site, SteelersDepot.com. Thank you guys so much. Have a very happy and safe New Year's. And, Dave, as always, thank you for being here. And Happy New Year's to you as well.
Oh, thanks for the excellent job you do moderating this. Makes my job a lot easier just to show up and talk to these fine people. Appreciate everybody showing up. That means a lot to us as well, too. Hopefully we got as many questions as possible answered for you tonight. And peace and love, and thank you for being here.
Dave, we doing podcasts Tuesday, Wednesday? Mike's wanting to know. Want to do it tomorrow morning?
I haven't even thought. You tell me.
Let's do it Tuesday morning to recap Tomlin. So let's anticipate that being the case there, Mike, and to all the other podcast listeners. So check out an archive version of this on the site in a little bit from Marlon Brando himself and Alex Kozora. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.